You're listening to the Technology for Mindfulness podcast, episode 31, hosted by me, Robert Plotkin. Today I'm going to be speaking with Meico Whitlock, also known as the Mindful Techie. Meico works with individuals and organizations with a specialty in working with nonprofits and activists to help them to stop putting their life on hold because of work and to start living a more balanced life. He helps people to tackle technology distraction and information overload so that they can live life on their own terms, free from the anxiety-ridden sea of never-ending emails, social media, notifications, and breaking news alerts. We're extremely pleased to welcome Meico Whitlock to the Technology for Mindfulness podcast. In the interview you're about to hear with Meico Whitlock, also known as the Mindful Techie, you'll hear Meico tell you about many practical ways in which you can take back control over your interactions with your smartphone and other devices. In today's tip, I'd like to focus on just one simple thing you can do to feel more relaxed, focused, and productive throughout your day, which is to make sure to take breaks throughout your busy workday. And we have a blog posting on this topic on Technology for Mindfulness called Take a Break for Your Body and Mind, in which I go into this in a lot more detail. But the first thing to recognize is that many of us believe that working nonstop is more productive, when in fact all the research shows, and I think if you pay attention to your own experience, you'll find that actually taking short breaks, even though it may feel like you're wasting time or creating, quote, dead time, actually helps you be more productive, in addition to, of course, being better for your health and helping you to be more mindful and grounded. There's lots of technology out there that can help you take breaks, from the simplest alarm that you could set to software out there that can remind you to take breaks every hour or according to any other schedule that you'd like. There's Pomodoro software out there, which lets you set your own schedule for, let's say, working for 25 minutes and then taking a break for 5 minutes. That's really super convenient. And there are, of course, many things you can do during these breaks, however long they might be, even if they're as short as a minute, from just sitting and breathing with your eyes closed to actually engaging in some formal meditation. Standing up, moving around, doing some simple stretches is a great idea. There's a website, which I think is a little tongue-in-cheek, called donothingfor2minutes.com, which encourages you to do exactly that. So whether you do this on your own without the aid of technology or with the aid of technology, taking breaks throughout your day when I know all of us are inclined to just work nonstop is a new habit you can practice and develop, and then pay attention to how you feel when you actually take breaks throughout your day. I hope you find this helpful, and I hope you enjoy the upcoming interview with Meico Whitlock. Hi, Meico, and welcome to the Technology for Mindfulness podcast.
Hey, Robert, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to have you here today. You're also known as the Mindful Techie, and everything you do is really perfectly suited to Technology for Mindfulness. So I'm sure we could spend all day speaking, about everything that you do. One thing I ask many people on the podcast is, what originally motivated you to get involved in working on technology and mindfulness? What drives you every day?
Yes, as I think about this has been a part of a lifelong journey. I've always been fascinated by technology and communications and have been working the vast majority of my career in the nonprofit and the public sectors, using that for what I describe as social good. But simultaneously in my personal life, I've always been a really introspective, really spiritual person. And I reached a point where I realized I wanted to be able to combine those and bring those together. And so that sort of started this shift to more intentionally integrate what I was doing in my professional work with my personal work. And then I kept getting questions about, some of the impact and the transformation that I was experiencing And I began to talk to other people and share. And that became sort of the launching pad or the springboard for the work that I do today.
So what was it that you were working on personally, I wonder, that was helpful to you? What motivated you to do whatever this work was? And then, what was it that other people started to find helpful to such an extent that you became the mindful techie?
So one of the bigger things is, in the nonprofit and the public sector in particular, a lot of folks go into those particular roles because they want to make a difference. They want to have a positive impact on the world, but oftentimes they do it at the expense of themselves, or they do it at the expense of their own self-care. And so I reached a point where I was actually one of those people, where I was on the brink of burnout, where I was depressed, where I had gained a lot of weight, and I was sort of overwhelmed by the enormity of the mission that I was focused on, and feeling like there weren't enough hours in the day, and I had to sort of give all of myself to that. And then simultaneously, with my role in communications and technology, being overwhelmed by sort of the rapidly evolving landscape there, and sort of the changing social norms around what it means to be connected and be responsive, both personally and professionally. And I just reached a point where I needed to take a step back. And I reached a point where I recognized that, the emails are going to continue to flow in. The to-do list is going to continue to grow. There's still going to be more than enough work to do, no matter how many things I check off my to-do list. But if I don't figure out how to integrate the spiritual work that I'm doing in my professional work, then I might not be around long enough to have the impact that I want to have. And so I began to talk openly about that at work, about work-life balance, about a more mindful and intentional approach to how we're using communication and technology tools. Started talking about it at conferences, and the response was just overwhelming. People wanted to essentially know what steps I was following, and wanted to know what I was doing, if I could help them. And that was sort of the one of the starting points for the work that I'm doing today.
Yes, this has been a problem certainly long before technology overtook our lives, that people who are activists, or anyone really who's passionately committed to their work or some kind of mission, there can be a tendency to keep working from that passion, out of that place of motivation. But people, can get burned out. And it's interesting the way you talk about it. You're not just saying you found you weren't as productive or as efficient as you wanted to be. It sounds like you're talking about really being concerned about your own health and well-being, and I don't want to take it too far, but potentially serious health consequences, if not worse, for you from this overwork, and that you found this was common amongst a lot of people.
Yeah, and I that's exactly right. And I think I would also couple that with the fact that, I think about the work that I do as a calling, right? That's a bit bigger than just me or an organization that I work with, for example. And so part of it is about my own personal health and well-being, but my personal health and well-being is an instrument through which I actually fulfill my purpose. And if my instrument is not well taken care of, my life is not well taken care of, then I can't be of benefit or be of service to others. And so I realized that I could literally drop dead at my desk, and, hopefully my friends and my colleagues will say lots of wonderful things about me in my memorial service. But at the end of the day, the inbox will continue to, the emails will continue rolling in, the to-do list will continue to grow. I'll be replaced, and the work of the organization will just sort of go on without me. And so I had to make a choice about, okay, well, I want to continue to do this work. I want to continue to do good. I want to continue to make a difference. I see value in technology and some of the other tools, and being able to do that. But there has to be a better way. There has to be a more sustainable and balanced and intentional way to go about this.
So you're talking about technology as being both part of the problem, but it sounds like also potentially part of the solution. You mentioned that technology can be helpful in helping people regain that balance, or maybe for some people gain it for the first time. And I know you teach individuals and train organizations on mindfulness, technology, and productivity. Can you talk a little bit about where the mindfulness comes into play in that picture?
Yeah, so the mindfulness, in terms of how I frame it for the folks that I work with, is really about taking a step back and to understand what your intention is with anything that you're doing. So when it comes to technology specifically, email and calendars tend to be like, really powerful tools and sort of more common tools in professional work settings. And so I talk to people about, okay, well, think about what your intention is for the day. What it is that you're trying to achieve? What's going to be the metric that you're going to use to decide or to know whether or not you've actually been successful or been impactful at the end of the day? And when you're in your inbox, or when you say yes to that calendar invite, or when you say no to that meeting request, is that actually aligned with the intention that you set? So this is really about helping people to sort of use mindfulness as a tool to sort of take a step back, to reflect on, okay, I'm here now in this moment, being present. What is it that I'm actually trying to do? What is it that I'm actually trying to impact? And is my use of technology in this moment and the subsequent moments is actually aligned with that or not? And if it's not aligned, then what do I need to do to actually to fill that gap?
So many of us have days that are so busy, it often feels like we're not even, I can say from my own experience, when I'm not paying attention, doesn't feel like I'm making a choice to use technology. It just feels like it's happening to me.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And wonder what you would say to people, play devil's advocate for a minute, who say things like they don't have a choice, they don't have time, this is not practical for them. I'm sure you hear these kinds of things all the time. The demands on them are too great. They can't pause and stop and think. They have constant demands on their attention and their time and their energy. But what would you say to people who have that experience?
Well, I would say to, honor that's, how you're feeling in that moment. But I would also sort of encourage people to consider that either you can make an intentional conscious choice on your own to sort of take a pause and take a step back and to reflect, or you can allow life circumstances to do that for you. Talking about my story earlier on, my health was beginning to impact me. Essentially my health was going to be the thing that was going to say, look, you need to sit down. And not to be dire, but people do this to the extreme where they actually burn out. And in some cases, there's some kind of major life event that happens, be it health-wise or something else that happens that actually causes people to take a step back. The other thing that I would say is in terms of productivity and actually being useful over the long term, what we know with multitasking is that multitasking is actually a myth. When you think about, doing multiple high-level tasks simultaneously, what's actually happening is not necessarily multitasking. What's happening is that your brain is switching back and forth really rapidly between those multiple things that you're working on, right? And so when you're doing that, you are causing cortisol levels, the stress hormones to rise in your body. You're physically exhausting the body. And if you're doing that over a prolonged period of time, you're essentially negatively impacting your ability to be productive. And the last thing I'll say to this point is, we know that rest is really important. We cannot go nonstop and not expect that there's going to be a consequence for that. We need to rest in part to rejuvenate, in part to clear the mental clutter, and also to make room for creativity and to actually be able to be more efficient and to be more productive. So for the folks that maybe feel like, okay, well, I just don't have time to do this, I would ask you, how is what you're doing right now actually working out for you? And Dr. Phil says, how's that working for you? I would ask you that question. Like if you've done this and it's not working for you, then I would offer you a challenge to maybe take a risk and say, you know what, maybe let me try something different. And if this other way doesn't work for you, then you can go back to what you were doing if that works for you. But the people that I work with actually find that they are actually able to get clearer about the fact that not everything is actually important, and that if they pull back and do the one or two most impactful things, that they actually end up being less stressed and more productive and having a greater impact.
It's interesting. It sounds like you're suggesting that one, people are not. If people are saying they don't have time, they may be wrong about how efficient they're currently being in their current way of doing things.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And that I really like your suggestion, to people who might be worried or dismissive of the idea of pausing, that this is not something they have to commit to trying out for the next year. They can try it out for an hour or a day and see how it
Exactly.
works. And what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I have a new planner that I'm going to be a daily planner that I'm going to be releasing to actually help people to do this. And it does it 90 days at a time, really starting with your day and with your week. And I the planner encourages you to reflect on essentially three areas. What are you grateful for? What's your intention for your day and for your week? And then what are your key tasks that are aligned with whatever your priorities are for that day or for that week or for that particular quarter? And what I have found is this is a process that I've used for myself that has been particularly impactful. But when I work with clients, my clients, which tend to be sort of overachievers, overworked folks, it's refreshing because it's sort of a simplified framework to help them sort of cut through the noise and to say, okay, well, actually, I have 20 things on my to-do list, but actually only 3 of these things are actually going to help me get to what I say my intention is for this week. And so I challenge them to focus on those 3 things and then see what happens with those other 17 things that are on their list. And they realize that those other 17 things weren't as important as they thought they were. So sometimes we are, as you mentioned earlier, we're operating on autopilot and we're suffering from what I describe as an epidemic of intention deficit disorder, intention with an I, deficit disorder, where essentially we are living our life so rapidly and so hurriedly that we're living in reaction to what the news is telling us about how bad the world supposedly is, what's showing up in our social media feed and on Instagram and on Facebook, what Amazon is trying to get us to buy in terms of the latest product. But we don't take the time to think about what our actual intention is for ourselves. And oftentimes, particularly in the public sector, nonprofit sector, we know more about the intention and the mission and the vision of our organizations. And we are so good at project managing to actually be effective in that regard, but we don't actually apply that same skill set to our own lives. And when we actually take the time to do that, it can be a powerful sort of reset for folks that are struggling from overwork and overwhelm from technology.
I'm interested in hearing more what you have to say about intention. It's certainly something that we focus on in mindfulness practice, but in the business world and when we think about productivity, I don't often hear it mentioned. Usually people talk about goals instead of intentions. And I wonder if you could talk about why in your work you focus on intentions. And I don't know if you have anything to say about how they might differ from goals or what the benefits are of focusing on intentions.
Yes. So for me, the way I think about intention is perhaps one of the most powerful creative forces in the universe. Essentially, an intention is a statement about what you want to create in a given moment in the universe. And it goes beyond simply, as you describe it, as a goal. A goal is, as I think about it, is sort of a metric that you use to measure how well you are doing in achieving a particular priority, for example. So your goal might be to, in a given day, to complete a report that you're working on or proposal that you're working on for a grant, and the priority might be to get more funding for your organization for the work that you're doing. But your intention, your broader intention, might be to have a positive impact in Baltimore, Maryland, which is the community that you might be living in, by providing, after school programs to at-risk kids or whatever it might be. And so your intention, the way I think about it, is really tied to a higher purpose and mission and vision. And when you are able to get clear and sort of tied into that, it becomes easier for you to understand what's important and what's not important. Oftentimes, we don't have a connection to our why. We don't have a connection to our purpose for showing up in a particular space and time. And because we don't have that, then we sort of respond to what the world is giving to us, right? So in a professional context, what that means is you get to work, you open up your email inbox, and then your email inbox is essentially someone else's to-do list for you. And so you spend your day sort of whittling through someone else's to-do list for you because you haven't actually taken the time to reflect on, okay, well, what am I trying to do? What do I intend to do? What do I intend to create this week or this day with my life, with my contribution to this organization, to this work? And then how can I then focus on those one or two or three things that are going to be the most impactful, as opposed to trying to check off everything else that people have given to me?
Yeah, and the way you describe it, intention as being a higher purpose, it seems like there is a spiritual side to it, and there's also a very practical side to it, in that it's something, as you said, when you're thinking about what to do next or whether to respond to a particular email, it's always possible to step back and ask, is responding to this email in line with what my intention is? It is a tool you can use despite its higher purpose.
Yes, and so I don't shy away from the spiritual component to it, but I work with lots of folks that come to me that aren't necessarily spiritual. They maybe they're agnostic or atheist, or maybe they describe themselves a different way. But I think we can all, regardless of what our faith or spiritual tradition is, we can all sort of connect to the fact that serving something that's greater than us, right? So when we do our work, when we're working for an organization, for example, particularly when we're trying to do good or make a difference in the way that I think about it in the world, part of what brings us all together is that we are connected to the mission or the vision for that organization or for that work. And that can be a starting place. People are sort of stuck or struggling, and maybe they're not spiritual, but maybe going back to, okay, well, what's the mission of my organization? What's the mission of my agency? What are we trying to do? And how will we know that we've been impactful or successful? And then asking yourself, is are my actions, is my to-do list, is my project list, whatever I'm working on, my task list, is that actually tied to actually moving the mission of the organization forward, or am I just doing busy work?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we also know, I know from scientific research, but also personal experience, that when you're doing work and you either don't know what the purpose is, or your belief is that the work doesn't serve any purpose, it can be really demotivating.
Yes.
And the converse is also true, that when you know what the purpose is and you know that what you're doing is in line with it, it can be really energizing.
Not only energizing, but I think that's also where you get the productivity gains, because your whole physical, your mental and your physical sort of presence shifts in a way that you are able to be more efficient. That's what I've experienced myself, and that's what folks that I've worked with tell me, that they sort of experience a sort of a different way of thinking about it. There's clarity as well, because there's there's clarity about, okay, well, I can actually connect the dots, and I can actually see how what I'm working on in this moment is actually tied to whatever it is that I said I was going to do, or whatever the mission or the vision is of the organization that I'm serving.
I'm curious, it's making me think about the roles of different people in organizations. I think more traditionally, it's thought that it's the role of management or a board of directors to be setting the vision or the mission, and everyone else to just do tasks that they're told to do. I wonder if you could speak to how intention and following intention fits with people in different roles within an organization, and whether this affects how you advise organizations, to work with everyone within those organizations?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So when I work mostly with folks that are, I guess, sort of the implementers, are actually doing the work. So these are like managers and below. And so I do a little work with executive leadership, but mostly sort of management level and below folks. And with those folks, what I work with them on is, you have your mission and your vision for your organization, but I want you to reflect on what is your personal mission and vision for the work that you're doing and your contribution that you're bringing. So if you're the janitor, if you are the receptionist, if you are a caseworker, you're connected to the larger vision and mission of the organization, but you can also set a mission and vision for what it is, the value that you want to bring to the organization. And when it comes to your daily intention or your weekly intention or quarterly intention, you can set an intention about how you choose to show up, right? So, perhaps if you are the receptionist, perhaps your intention might be to be a positive or like a smiling presence for everyone that you're greeting on the phone, or as they come in, for their appointments. The same thing if you are the janitor, you can make an intention about wanting to be a critical part of keeping the space clean and open, and having it to be a really safe space for the folks that are working there, for them to be productive. And so I think that oftentimes we are waiting for something or someone's outside of us to help us to do that. And what I try to get people to do is to understand that you don't need to wait for that you can decide right here and now, because we all have something unique in terms of how we show up in it, how we give to the world. And we can make a choice about how we want to show up in the world, particularly if we are working in an environment that might be really tough. Perhaps it's really stressful. Maybe you work in an emergency room at a hospital, or maybe you work in a social service agency where the type of clientele that you're dealing with have really challenging issues. You can decide that recognizing those particular challenges, those unique circumstances, you can make a decision about what you want the outcome to be of your presence, right? That you want your presence to be a calming presence for the clients that are in distress that are working with you. That you want your clients to be more calm, or whatever it is that you might be thinking about, even starting at that smaller level up to tying into whatever the organizational mission is. So I encourage people to not just wait for something outside of you, but to actually consciously make a decision about how it is that you want to show up and what kind of impact that you want to have in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It ties into something I found through my own mindfulness practice. I've certainly heard many people talk about it, which is through mindfulness, being able to recognize how you have choice in your own life where you might feel like you don't. And part of what I hear you saying is, let's say you're an employee in an organization where your role is somewhat dictated for you.
Yes.
If you don't apply mindfulness to it, you might just make the assumption there's nothing you can do to change your role or how you act or how you are in that situation, when in fact there may actually be a lot of room or openings for you to, as you said, change how you come to that role or how you're present in it. I mean, one thing, as out of my own personal experience, I'm a lawyer. I've run my own business for many years, law practice. And sometimes people say to me, oh, it must be great, as if I have unlimited freedom because I'm the business owner. Mm-hmm. And I say, well, I work for clients, right? But it's not absolute in either direction, right? It's a misunderstanding to think I have absolute freedom because I'm the owner of the business. It's also a misunderstanding to think that I'm completely under the control of my clients. Of course, I work for them. But there's room, there's always room. And you could have the CEO of a corporation has a lot of flexibility, but answers to the shareholders and to the customers. I mean, everyone is under constraints and also has some degree of freedom.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm repeating back what I think you're saying. You work to help people recognize where they may not otherwise see it and feel somewhat helpless. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, that's fair. And sort of, and applying this to the technology piece, one of the challenges that we have with technology, the way, particularly a lot of the, what I would describe as sort of the online technologies like social media and the smart devices is, the designers have designed these in such a way that they capture your attention, right? So companies are motivated by a profit motive that essentially says, as much time as we can get your eyeballs on, your stream on this particular social media platform or on your device, the more money that we can make, the more we can sort of convince you that you need the latest version of it when it comes out, or whatever it might be. So that is definitely true, that there are people that are intentionally designing technology to be addictive, but notwithstanding that, we still have freedom of choice in terms of how we choose to engage and how we use the platforms and the tools. And it really starts with getting clear about what your intention is. And when you're clear about what your intention is, then you can get clear about how you actually want to use the technology. So if you are clear that, you want to be spending more time with your partner and with your children, then you can make a conscious decision and say, you know what, I realize that my use of Facebook or my use of, watching TV or whatever it is actually getting in the way of valuable time that I could be spending with my family. And now that I'm clear about that intention, and now that we've discussed this and we actually share this as intention as a family, then we can reclaim that time. We can reclaim that space, and then we can perhaps flip the script and have the technology work for us in a different way. And so I encourage people to think about it that way as well when it comes to technology.
I wonder if you can give us some specific examples, maybe with respect to email or calendar or social media, beyond setting an intention. I wonder if there's any specific practices or pointers or tips or habits you might suggest to people to try out for these things that do have such a strong pull over us.
Yeah, so with email, there are a couple of things that I would recommend. The first is to I think for a lot of people, particularly folks that work in sort of high stress professional environments, there might be a tendency to check their email first thing in the morning or to check it first thing at night before they're going to bed. I would encourage people to resist that impulse. And one of the ways that you can do that is by having a strong morning and evening routine. And I tell people to start with, if you don't think you don't have time, start with what I call 5 minutes of joy. Five minutes of time that you can spend for yourself, whether that's sort of you standing in the kitchen, drinking your coffee or drinking your tea, maybe you're cuddling with the dog on the couch, whatever it is, find those 5 minutes of joy. And then the second aspect of this, particularly in the morning, is to set your intention and sort of get clear about what your schedule is for the day first and what you want to achieve before you check your email. That way, when you do log into your inbox, you're able to actually plow through your inbox and actually focus on those most important things that are going to help you to actually achieve that intention, as opposed to you getting sucked in and then you're not knowing like what you're doing and you sort of spend all your day there, but you at the end of the day, you realize you haven't been productive at all. Something else to think about too is once you're clear about what your key projects or tasks are for that day, to actually, if email is a distraction, close your email as you're working on those things. And I know that in some organizations, this might be challenging for some folks because they might be expected to, respond right away, or they feel like they're expected to respond right away. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage folks to do an experiment and to essentially test to see how long you can go without responding to an email before someone calls you or knocks on your office door or is like wondering where you are. And maybe that's 20 minutes, maybe that's 15 minutes or whatever it is, whatever that block of time is, then that lets you know how you can structure your work, right? So you can structure your work in 15 or 30-minute blocks, and you know that you can shut off your email for that amount of time, and people aren't going to think that you're being unresponsive or that you're ignoring them, right? So that's one aspect. Those are a couple of things you can do as it relates to email. When it comes to your calendar, your calendar can be a powerful tool to actually really assess how much time you actually have to do things. I think often one of the problems people who overwork is they think they have more time than they actually do. So what I encourage people to do is, going back to the planner that I was talking about with the weekly priorities and the daily priorities, is once you identify those, actually plot those on your calendar for how much time it's actually going to take, right? So estimating, maybe it's going to take you an hour or 30 minutes for whatever the task is, blocking out time for when you're actually going to be checking your email throughout the day. If that is a major disruptor and you need to set aside dedicated time to work through that and all the other major key tasks. And that's going to give you a clear indication of how much time you actually have and hopefully let you know that perhaps you need to start saying no to some things or no, not right now to something. So those are two sets of advice I would give folks based on email and calendar, because I know that those are perhaps the most prevalent tools in the workplace setting. And I guess the last thing I would say when it comes to social media, I think social media can be a powerful tool to reconnect with folks. It can be a powerful tool for entertainment. It can be a powerful tool for sort of keeping up with what's going on in the world, particularly from the perspective of the people on the ground. And I would encourage people, if that people find it valuable in that way, to continue to be plugged in, but to be intentional about it. For me, I set aside time for that. So I give myself, maybe 30 minutes or 45 minutes and say, I'm going to be on Instagram, or I'm going to watch cat videos on Facebook because that's how I unwind, or that's going to be my break for the day, whatever it is. But after that time is up, I'm going to go back to, whatever it is that I was working on. And there are apps like Moment, for example, that will help you to track your usage of different apps, and to keep tabs on that, and to really help you to bring awareness to how much time you're actually spending on your device, how much time you're actually spending on different apps, so that you can begin to assess, if that usage is actually adding value or not. And if it's not adding value, then what kind of shifts you need to make in order to actually find that balance for you.
That's really all great practical pointers for people. I really appreciate it, because I know for many people, including me, although I do have a mindfulness practice, sometimes it can be challenging to translate the general mindfulness practice into concrete steps we can take in connection with technology. I just want to relate one story that people might find funny or be able to relate to if they're going to try this thing with the calendar, which is, I have a business coach who many years ago had me do this exercise, and I still do it, the plotting out what I have to do. And I remember I had never done it before, like most people. And he said, really, everything you have to do, because you only have that time. And I did it, and I looked at it, and my first reaction was, there is no way I can come close to doing everything I have to do. But what my mind then told me was, therefore, stop putting this in the calendar, as if putting my head in the sand about it would make the problem go away. Mm-hmm. And just stop looking at it's too scary. Of course, working with a coach, he said, Robert, that's not the solution. The solution is to really, he didn't say be present with what you're looking at on the calendar, but that's what he meant. That is the reality of your life right now, Robert. You have too many things to do, and that's why you keep not getting them all done and being stressed about it. Better to really take a cold, sober, honest look at it all. It's not going to get done by not looking at it on the calendar. And we really had to work through how to start getting these things done, or, as you said, say no to some of them, delegate some of them, work on them more efficiently. And it's not like I did it one time and it's over. I continue to do it. I don't have to do it as intensively as I did in the beginning. Do it more as a sanity check now, but it was a real eye-opening thing. I mean, I had to admit how out of touch I was, or unaware I was of how would I put it? Inconsistent, what I was actually doing was with my belief about how much time it was going to take me.
Yeah. And so to that point, one of the exercises actually I encourage people to do is to do a time audit. And I have a free tool for that. But you can do this on an index card or a blank sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11 paper, where essentially you sort of take a typical day for yourself, and you essentially write out all the things that you do in that day and how much time it takes you to do those things and when you do those things. And then on the other side, you write out, based on what your priorities and what your intention are, how it is that you actually want to be spending your time. And you look at those side by side, and you actually sort of compare what the gap is. And that can be a starting process to figure out, okay, I'm acknowledging where I am. I am taking time to vision and get clear about intention about where it is I want to go. There's clearly some work to do in terms of bridging the gap, but now I have a starting point to begin to make a shift.
Yeah, and it can be difficult to see that reality. I'm sure that someone who teaches mindfulness, you help people confront whatever feelings they might have when they see that, on paper or on a screen or whatever form it takes.
Yeah. And so what I tell people is that, so this is not an exercise about, criticizing yourself or judging yourself. This is just about sort of observing what's here. This is the reality. And we know that you are amazing, that you're wonderful, that you're great, and that you want to continue to do great work and to have an impact. And so the conversation that we're having is really about helping you to do that. And so we see that you have right now, it seems like you have too many things going on that are getting in the way of you doing the work the way that you want to be doing it. And so we're going to work together to simply see what's there, and what changes we can make. So I work with people on, I work a lot with talking people down from the ledge of sort of judging themselves and feeling like they're failures or that they're not good enough. Because one of the characteristics of the high achievers that I work with is that they're perfectionists, right? So they feel like, and I fall into that category. I'm a recovering perfectionist and workaholic. You feel like you're overwhelmed by this feeling that you have to get everything done and it has to be perfect the first time you do it, right? And I work with people on what would happen if we just did good enough. Because if you are a high achiever and you're a perfectionist, chances are your good enough is better than most people's, perfect, right? And then we can iterate and we can build on that. And so part of it is getting people to trust me and to say, well, let's just try this and see how you feel. And then let's take the next step and then the next step. And then over time, people begin to see that it actually is useful in terms of reducing the stress, reducing the anxiety, and getting people to actually take a step back and to actually have more space to do what it is they want to do without all of the sort of the negative emotional baggage that might come with it.
Yeah, I mean, I can say I'm in the same boat. Just an admission that it's one of the reasons I decided to do a podcast was because it is spontaneous. Of course, I plan somewhat for it, but we record, we barely edit. And for me, as a perfectionist who likes to plan everything out word for word in advance, it was a way of me confronting that part of myself to say, hey, can I do this thing? I'm going to go out there. I'm going to speak to people like you. It's going to be improvised. Whatever happens, happens. And then I'm going to post it for the world to listen to. Even if there are flubs, what I say isn't perfect. It's not all great. If I had written it out in advance, I might have felt better about it. It's really partially me confronting that part of myself to work on getting better at just not being perfect and being who I am and it being okay.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about here. So congratulations.
Thanks. It's an ongoing work in progress, that's for sure. I want to talk to you about, I know you've got a course coming up, and I know you mentioned the new planner. Could you tell us a little bit about the new course that you've got in development that you're going to be releasing soon?
Yeah, so it's a new 6-week live online course that starts on July 24th. It'll run for 6 weeks through the end of September. And it's a course that is specifically for what I describe as purpose-driven high achievers that are committed to doing good work in the world, making a difference, but they want to do it without burning out, and they want to do it without being overwhelmed by all of the technology in their life. And so over the course of those 6 weeks, we're going to walk together the framework of actually getting clear about your life vision, which includes your vision for both your personal and your professional work, and then using that vision that that we come up with together to actually set priorities for both your personal and your professional work. And I'm emphasizing both the personal and the professional because oftentimes we get so thrown into just the professional aspect of it, but we don't take time to think about what are our personal goals, right? So it's a personal goal might be to, you recognize that your work is getting in the way of your relationship with your spouse. And so you want to actually, you want to attend to that. You want to nurture that relationship and you want to spend more time with your kids. Or perhaps there's a book project you've been working on, you've been putting on the back burner. You want to begin to work on that. So I work with people on sort of finding the balance between those things. Setting up, streamlining your calendar and your email, saying yes and no the right way, in a way that honors you, that honors the folks that are asking for your time. And to do it in a way that it feels good. And I think oftentimes we say yes when we really mean no. And we say no and we feel guilty about it. And so then we take it back or we say things that actually make it worse because we feel so bad about saying no. And so I work with people around how do you actually say no, what I describe as sort of the right way that honors you and honors the other person. And then also how you actually seek help, right? So seeking help and support by virtue of delegating, by virtue of automating some of the things. Like if you don't like grocery shopping, then don't grocery shop. Like sign up for Instacart or some of these other services that are out there. Identifying those areas in your life where you could use additional support and that could free up your mental and emotional space to be working on and focusing on other things. so that you can be impactful for your business or for your organization, and also be fully available for your friends and for your family. And when people sign up for the course, I have this new planner that I'm going to be releasing called the Intention Planner that walks you through how you actually stay on track with this for 90 days at a time. So oftentimes we set goals for a year or for a lifetime, and we do our vision boards, but then we sort of stop there. And part of the reason people stop is because they don't know how to break down those large vision and those goals into actual practical day-to-day things. And so by breaking it up into 90-day increments and then further into monthly, weekly, and daily, you begin to see, okay, here are the steps I can be taking to actually get to that lifelong goal, or that year-long goal that I might have. So that's what the course is really all about. It's about helping people to really transform their relationship to their work and their technology so that they can be fully present for the life they're living and for the impact that they're having on the world.
What's the name of the course, and where can people find out about it and sign up?
It's called the Reclaim Your Life Summer Bootcamp, and people can go to intentiondeficitdisorder.com/bootcamp. So this intention with an I, deficitdisorder.com/bootcamp. And they can sign up for actually a fit call, because it's not a program that's for everyone. So I want to make sure we're going to have a small group of 10 folks. So it's not a large group. And so I want to make sure that the folks who are signed up are the folks that can actually benefit from the program. So if folks are interested, they can go to intentiondeficitdisorder.com/bootcamp, sign up for a fit call, and then we can talk about what your challenges are and if the course is a good fit for you.
So that's very interesting. You've got a small group of people. So am I right then that whoever attends the course will have some direct interaction with you, even though it's an online course? How will that work, and what will the format be?
Yeah, so it'll be, we're going to have 6 live trainings, but in addition to the live trainings, there's going to be sort of what I describe as sort of laser coaching, right? So because it's such a small group, people have an opportunity to share what their challenges are and to get feedback in the group setting from me, but also from other folks in the group. And then I'm also offering folks 2 one-on-one sessions with me. So at the front end of the course, you're going to get a one-on-one session with me. And then after the course is ended, because I want to make sure you don't just sort of fall off and get discouraged. I want you to actually be able to implement and move things forward. So you're going to get another one-on-one coaching session with me after that. And people will have ongoing access to the weekly online accountability sessions that I make available to anyone, which is absolutely free for folks that want to take advantage of those things. So it's, and I tell people that this isn't about information. This isn't about like inspiration or like motivation. This is really about doing the work. And so this is something that also differentiates this course from a lot of the other things that are out there. This is really about people doing the work. And there isn't busy work. These are all the exercises, the workbook, the planner. All of this is based on work that I do and I have done for myself, and that I have done with other clients where I have seen success. So I tell people that this is not busy work, that this is work on your life. And so come ready to do the work, and you'll see the transformation.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, it's very unusual for me to hear about someone who's put this amount of thought into both the content and the structure of the course to maximize the effectiveness of it, to maximize the likelihood that people will really succeed and get some direct benefit out of it. This is not just a set of videos people are going to watch. They're going to get guidance from you. They'll have workbook. They'll have specific exercises they can be doing. It sounds like it's going to be a pretty intensive course directed at what people are actually dealing with in their lives.
Yes. And so for folks that are struggling with the issue of work-life balance, for struggling with technology distraction, wanting to take a more mindful and intentional approach to those things in their life, this is the course for you. I'm really committed to positive impact and transformation for the folks that I work with. And so the course is intentionally structured to do exactly that.
That's fantastic. Well, Meico, this has been really great talking to you about mindfulness, technology, productivity, and how they all relate to each other and the work that you do to help people. So thank you so much for being on the Technology for Mindfulness podcast.
And thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing and actually making space to have these conversations.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for joining us for this Technology for Mindfulness podcast with me, Robert Plotkin, and today's guest, Meico Whitlock, also known as the Mindful Techie. You can find out more about Meico and how he helps individuals and organizations to strike a new work-life balance in the digital world at mindfultechie.com. If you liked today's episode, please leave us a review on iTunes and share the episode with your friends. Those and all other links are in the show notes. And check out our blog at technologyformindfulness.com for information and tips about science, technology, and mindfulness. I'm Robert Plotkin, and I'll join you next time on the Technology for Mindfulness podcast with Ted Meisner, the host of Present Moment, Mindfulness Practice and Science, and the manager of online programming and community development at the Center for Mindfulness, best known as the home of MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. Join us then when we'll talk about the promises and challenges of bringing mindfulness education online.